Um, and if you're here to get more information about our student team. So just as a little bit of a background, the student team for this semester, the Asian American Center was founded in 2020. And at the start, there was a student programming board that was a part of the development of the center. And we want to acknowledge and we want to acknowledge their service. And they were they were an important part of the AAC's founding and to its early years. Since then, the structure of the student programming board has changed. The name has evolved. For example, their duties have evolved. But for this semester, this upcoming year, we wanted to reintroduce um, um, a student programming board or a team. I think we're calling it the student team. So sorry to confuse you for using different terminology, but let's call it the student team. As a way of being as a way of functioning in a couple of different ways. First, we wanted to allow students to advise the center on programming and also plan and execute programming of their own. And so, we have certain specific sort of structures in place for that. So, for example, as a part of student programming, we wanted to devolve some of our standing programs to the student board to plan and execute with both me and Marcus's support in planning, in the logistics, etc. Then there's also the student teams function as kind of student ambassadors out to other student orgs, both Asian American, but also throughout the campus, to other departments, to other students and student groups. And so they will be liaising with students. We might, you guys might help us table at student events, at student fairs, and things like that. So that's another part of the student team. And then, attending some of our events, being again the sort of student ambassadors of the AAC, and advocating for student needs to both us at the AAC and to administration. And so those are the sort of general missions that we put forth to start. Now, as we come together and as a student team comes together, we want to start developing those missions, working in in consultation with you guys, with the student teams. And so, whether it's planning the events or doing that kind of ambassadorial work or advising sort of gathering and advising student needs to advocate for the administration. These are all things that we could sit down and talk about and develop as a mission. So before I open it up to any questions that people might have, the first thing is there is an application, and it's a very brief application. And I'm going to post it in the chat, or yeah, I'll just do it. And so this form is due. Marcus, do you have the date handy? I think it's September the 8th is the due date for it. And so this just gives us an idea of what your interests are, what your capacity might be. September 9th. Thank you, Marcus. And sort of what your strengths are. And so we ask that you, fill out the interest form, and then, we will let you all know in a week or two afterwards, um, whether or not you could be a part of the team. So are there any specific questions or concerns or ideas that you might have about starting up the student programming team again? No? Marcus, am I missing anything? Oh, well, Marcus was, oh, what are some programming ideas? Thank you, Joanna. Well, some of the programming ideas we have that students might be interested in helping us generate. Um, well, some of the programming ideas is really up to you, because one of the plans we had was to set up standing programs for the student teams to plan and execute. So this might be taking over one of our first Friday sessions. We could provide, the center will provide snacks or lunch, and then, the student team could do, for example, a film screening and discussion, or just a discussion around topics that are pertinent to Asian American communities. That is also applicable to the community writ large. The Asian American Center, just as an introduction of to what we do. We are an academic and community engagement center within the Office of the Provost. And we have a largely academic mission as set forth by the university. And we also are an integral part of the university's public mission towards community service and engagement. So what does that mean? So a lot of the events that we do are connected in some way to our mission, which is to cultivate knowledge and understanding of Asian American histories, cultures, and peoples. And so it's a pretty broad mission, where in which, hopefully the student team could generate some ideas of their own. So I don't know if you have any specific ideas, but we're hoping that we could that I could work with the student team. So for the most part, I and Marcus will be advising the student teams and helping them create the kind of programming. So in addition to standing programming, like our first Friday series, we could also do a one-off program, invite a particular speaker or scholar or artist or writer that the team might be interested in bringing in, that ties with the sort of goal again of cultivating knowledge around um, 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 uh, specific ideas around. Um, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, so specific sort of authors or writers, community organizations, for example. Um, also you guys might the student team might also integrate into some of the larger standing programs that we have at the center. So we have a couple. One is our fellows program, which invites scholars, writers, um, community organizers to campus. And so the student team might have special programming that they put on with the fellows. Um, um, or it could be or as I mentioned, it could be a sort of separate standalone program. I don't know if that answered your question, Joanna. I don't know if you were thinking about specific topics, but again, this is something that I would love to get y'all's, thoughts on as we plan events for the semester and in concert with the student teams. But there's any host of topics, of categories, of uh, any host of sort of topics that we could think about, whether it's sort of immigration policy, imperialism at home and abroad, um, Orientalism, sort of diaspora, cultural politics, media representation. Um, these are all sort of topics that we could generate programming ideas around. And again, I'm here to help you. Marcus is here to help you. With the logistics, with the topics. One of the things that I think is important to note is that because of the way that our university is structured and because the way that the center is, one of the things that this particular that our center might not be able to do is strictly social events. That doesn't mean that there can't be a social component to it. In fact, we welcome programming ideas that have a social component to it, but they can't strictly be cultural programming that is only open to one particular culture. So, for example, we can't do yeah, I don't know, an event only for Asian Americans that are closed to everybody else, So I think those are the kinds of sort of lines that unfortunately or fortunately, we have to sort of live with as a part of the university. Um, is there anything else I'm missing, Marcus, in terms of sort of establishing kind of rules around what events that we might not be able to do that are perhaps strictly social, that are open to only one particular group of people. If we a lot, our events have to be open to the general public or at least the campus. Yeah, so Esther, that's a great question. So are there specific goals um, that we want to achieve with the student teams? Um, well, I think, this was something that, as we did our survey, our cross-campus survey, having some student input in through official channels, or a structure in which students could input ideas, programmatic ideas, structural ideas. That was something that came up multiple times in the survey. And so we're hoping that piloting this new iteration of the student team um, um, could help start building that. And in terms of specific goals, specific sort of expectations or goals that we have set, for the student teams, that's going to be sort of up to the student team. We didn't want to put very specific targets before we had students come together. And so, the sort of general areas that I mentioned that we wanted the student leadership team to come up with is maybe one or two events per semester, attending one or two of the AAC's events or being a part of planning some of the AAC events, liaising with student organizations, serving as ambassadors for the AAC, and then also to advocate for the needs, um, uh, advocate for student needs to the AAC and to the administration. So in terms of specific goals and specific focuses, um, I think that was going to be, in terms of the specific numbers, for example, I think that was going to be something that we were going to develop as a group, just so we could hold each other accountable. But so yeah, I don't know if that answers your question or if it's too open-ended. We could certainly go into specifics then. But again, the thing that I wanted to stress is that, this new iteration is something that we want to develop in consultation with the members, right? Partially, this is just the way that I have, I'm a very sort of collaborative manager in some ways, in that I try to make the work collaborative, right, and to listen to folks, and to devise solutions together. So I think in terms of the year-long goals, I think it's going to be up to the team as a whole. Moving on to some other questions. Thank you, Esther, for that. Maybe student team events. So that's a good question. So in the chat, there was a question that asked, will the student team be split up into different groups? And I think that's a good question. I think it depends on how many people we have in our student group, in the student team. And in the past, I think each sort of cluster of student teams had their own projects. And that's a format that we're trying to go away from. So rather than having multiple projects across multiple student groups within the leadership team, I think having sort of having the group kind of work towards one or two specific events would be something that I envision would be a better kind of idea. But that's not to say that we can't, sort of work on different things, or have different sort of events. Again, depending on student interests and student needs. So Stuti, I don't know if that answers your question. But again, I think it kind of depends whether or not how many groups within the student teams there will be. I think it just kind of depends on the number of people we have. Now, if we have a lot of people, I think, and a lot of interest, we might have to split up into different teams who might focus on different things. And I think that gets to Esther's question. In terms of specific traits and skills within the students that are looking to apply. And I think, we're open to students at all levels. We're open to everyone from first years to seniors. The availability of time is, I think, an important one, and I'm glad that you brought it up. So right now, I think the current iteration and the current sort of availability of time is such that I don't see this being a heavy lift for folks. I think it'd be nice to meet as a group, maybe once every couple of weeks, and then probably a little more when we actually have to sit down and plan for events and do the logistics of the event planning and things like that. But this, one of the, I think, benefits that I'd like to kind of pitch to you all, I think working with the AAC, I think, again, this is to help shape the AAC's programming. We'll have food for you. As Marcus, I think both Marcus and I are one of our love languages is food. So having food and we'll also have swag for you as well. We're hoping to have you guys devise of a plan for swag as well. Um, um, I made the pitch of having AAC bucket hats, but I don't know if that's a good idea or not. I don't know if college kids like bucket hats anymore. Um, but but swag is definitely something that will be a benefit, and also helping us, pick what we would want to, give out to students. So availability of time, like I said, we're hoping to meet as a group every couple of weeks, maybe two to sometimes, maybe, once every 2 or 3 weeks, throughout the semester. And then, more as we get to actually planning the events and stuff. And then experience, like I said, we're looking for people with all kinds of skills. Some people who might be more extroverted, who's like really into, going to, student org GBMs as a representative of the AAC, letting people know of our resources, letting people know that, how they could get involved. And as I mentioned, the AAC has a couple of standing programs in addition to our fellows program, where we invite outside scholars. We also have CPIA, which is a student programming projects initiative that helps students fund projects related to Asian American studies, whether it's research, whether it's traveling to conferences, whether it's bringing people onto campus, or working with student orgs who might want to, co-sponsor an event with the AAC. So those are all the kinds of, things that the AAC does. And so being able to share those resources out with other students, is a job. But then there's also space for people who might not be the kind of extroverted, person who is better at, doing the back end stuff, because the back end stuff is also very important. You know, Knowing how the university works in the back end is a skill that I will say is it will help serve you well. Being able to navigate bureaucracies is something that I've found to be very valuable in doing this kind of service work for the university. And this is something that, is definitely a part of your service to the university. It should definitely go in your CV, should definitely go in your resume. Because, being able to, show people that you have worked within in the back end or in the front end, is an important sort of skill to hone. It's something that, I'm still learning after being at a university for 10 years. Um, um, so I think those are all, I think, some of the things that the student teams could help you build. If that's something that, or if you're an introvert, for example, who would like to learn, who would like to build some of those skills as it, relates to sort of interpersonal communication. That's something that, I could help people with, Marcus could help people with, and advise. Yeah. Esther, did that answer your question? Anybody else? Anybody else have any questions? Anybody have any concerns or thoughts about what would make the student team function better? As I mentioned, right now it's until we have the students come together, um, um, you know, the sort of mission is still kind of, it's shaped by the student team. So, I don't want to say that there's no mission. I think the student team's mission is the mission of the AAC, in that it's set up to cultivate, um, knowledge, of Asian American cultures, communities, and peoples and histories. Um, but yeah, I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts about, um, or suggestions, before we, wrap up. Again, let me repost the application. So as I mentioned, there is an application. Um, Oh, and Marcus told me to mention our budget. So we do have a budget for you all um, for programming. Right now, I think it's the exact number isn't quite set, but it's hovering around 500, although I think, there might be some flexibility there. Um, but yes, so we have a budget for your programming as well. Um, okay. Well, if nobody has any questions or comments, why don't we wrap up? And I'll wrap up by just saying thank you all for coming, and thank you all for listening, and for your oh, the budget. I think that was that for the semester or for the year, Marcus? Or do we have a final on that? Oh, it's per there you go. Thank you, Marcus. Per project.